Hey guys, welcome back for another episode of Not the Girl Next Door. I'm your host, Meg Reynolds, and sorry, I took a little bit of a hiatus last week. I just had, honestly, a lot of podcast clips I wanted to catch up on. I've had a lot of bookings coming up, and this was my 1 week, last week, I guess, by the time this records. This is it was my 1 week, and currently is, as I'm recording this. I don't know what I'm saying, but it's my 1 week to kind of get shit done. Guys, big girl, I just filed my taxes, my first full year of taxes, self-employed. That was scary. It was really, really scary. But shout out to my accountant for making sure I did not get in trouble with the IRS because we got that shit done. So getting shit done this week, and got a lot of exciting bookings coming up and things on the horizon, and just honestly a lot of opportunities that I'm really, really stoked about. And kind of where this episode came from in my mind is obviously last month we did a lot of talk on Women's History Month. And since the start of the year, I've been talking to you guys about where I'm struggling with my mental health and just feelings of turning 27 and I'm running out of time, and reflecting on the past decade of my life. And it kind of brought me to this topic of strength. And so before I even start speaking on what I wrote out for this episode, I want you guys to ask yourself, what does strength mean to me? What does strength mean to you? And not the version of strength that you perform, but the version and the reality that you're actually living of strength. Also, this episode is not sponsored by Celsius. I just really love grape Celsius, and I'm a grape girly, and don't knock me, all right? I know some people hate grape. I love it. You hate it, more for me. Anyways, so it's not sponsored. I wish it was. Anyway. But so what does strength mean to you? And I think when we think of strength, we conflate it with bravado and arrogance. And, we think of physical strength. We think of the bodybuilders in the gym, especially, living in Nashville. I go to a very bodybuilding heavy gym. I lift myself, and there's nothing wrong with that. Physical strength is important for our overall health. Yes. But I obviously am focusing on strength of mind. We do resistance training for our physical body so that as we age, our bones don't break, we're able to live more life and be more independent. So we need to be doing resistance training for our minds as well. So as we age and we encounter more challenges in our life, we can actually handle them. It's equally as important. And, so what comes up for you when you ask yourself, am I a strong person? What does strength look like to me? For me, for the longest time, I thought strength was really just about pushing through, right? Having the mental fortitude to be suck it up, Buttercup. I can't even tell you, that was the soundtrack of my childhood, was being told, suck it up, Buttercup, and life's not fair, and blah, blah, blah. I'm sure everybody listening has heard that as well, but I want to reframe the way we look at strength, because strength is not always about pushing through and toughening up and pulling yourself up by the bootstraps. Sometimes strength looks like softening yourself, looks like allowing yourself to be vulnerable, and looks like allowing yourself to open up to people and let people in and all that stuff. Strength is another piece of the puzzle in life that is so nuanced. And I think when we put strength in a box, a rigid box, that's why so many people are performing in their own lives part of it. Strength is a two-sided thing. Sometimes it looks like putting your big girl pants on and doing the hard thing. And then other times it's letting yourself cry on the couch and eating your pint of ice cream. Both of those count as strength. Neither is more impressive than the other. It's just what the truth strength is knowing which situations call for which, piece of it. Strength should not be a performance that you feel like you're failing at. It should feel like something that you have access to in yourself, and it's there when you actually need it. That's what I kind of want for you guys to get from today's episode. And I think this topic of strength really comes up too, especially obviously in modern dating, where there's that gap where women feel like men can't be emotionally vulnerable with them because they're not emotionally vulnerable and don't know themselves. Before I continue on the emotional pieces of strength, I want us to take a look at a little bit of science. I'm not a science girly. I don't claim to be. However, I did a little bit of reading about the brain and neuroplasticity, and it's kind of fascinating because I've talked about in a couple episodes before about confirmation bias, how our brain is always looking for things to reinforce certain beliefs that we have within ourselves. And that is kind of what also inspired this episode a little bit, because I wanted to take it a step further, because neuroplasticity, our brain neuroplasticity, such a tongue twister. Our brain's neuroplasticity is the foundation of mental strength and mental fortitude. Like, our brains are designed to change. They are designed to constantly be taking in information. And it's fascinating. Like, I wish I had the stomach for science, because I do find all this stuff very, very interesting. But the thing is, our brain can only change and do its proper function when we're no longer running from the things that we are needing to heal, right? And this is the beauty of us as people. It's the beauty of life itself, is none of this is permanent. Like, you have the power to change your life at any given moment. To quote Eileen Gu, she said at the Winter Olympics this year, "You can control how you think, so you can control who you are." That has stuck with me because, one, she is only 22 years old. And this comes from that interview clip where someone was like, "Can you take us through your brain? Because we're so amazed." It's true. When you listen to Eileen Gu speak, she is like just incredibly, she is just an incredible woman. And I cannot wait to continue to see her in like, the way she conducts herself in interviews is just a masterclass in public speaking. And also just, she is a masterclass, I think, in knowing yourself, because you can see she is so definitive and confident in who she is. But this is my point, is your brain doesn't change when life is comfortable. It changes with trials and tribulations. Your brain's ability to rewire itself is literally activated by hardships and challenge. And it's up to you to be controlling the narrative of your mind and controlling what you do with that. And I think something we all need to stop saying, because and this is kind of part of having a victim mindset, is falling into this trap of saying, "Oh, it always ends up like this," or "Oh, it never works out," because those two words keep you in that thought loop of like, I'm a victim. Things just happen to me. My life never works out. It just sucks. And I know I've had those moments too in my life where they always come at times where I'm like on the edge, and it's like just the straw that broke the camel's back. I snap, I have a mental breakdown, and I find myself living in my past again instead of learning from it. And I revert back to those unhealed parts of myself. When you're pushed beyond your comfort zone, the brain your neurons are forming new connections, right? And so difficulties you shouldn't look at as detours and roadblocks from becoming who you are. You need to recognize they are the path. And even take my story. If you guys have been around this podcast for long enough, you know my life has not been linear. It hasn't been any sort of like clear path. It's been up and then down, and then we're going to go left instead of right. And it's like that SpongeBob meme where it's like, we're not talking about this or this, we're talking about this. Like, that is my life, and that's your life too. And, one of the biggest things that I actually look for in a partner in dating is someone who also has had trials and tribulations. I don't need you to be traumatized because I learned from that mistake. I want you to have already healed from those things. But I think it is a green flag when someone has had hardships that they've overcome and they can confidently speak about them, talk about their mistakes, talked about what they've learned from them. I think it shows that you are a well-rounded individual when you can do that. But we need to change our attitude around hardships, because our brain is literally changing around those hardships, and our attitude towards them is what is going to determine the outcome. Like, think of the person in your life who you think has never had a hard day. Life was just handed to them on a silver platter. I mean, I talk about my college relationship all the time. Like, one of the biggest things that we would butt heads over in our relationship is I was going through this very tumultuous time. My dad obviously just left, and I had already had so much trauma in my life. I was really struggling mentally, and like, he had never had any of that. I mean, I always say, like, he graduating college was the hardest thing he'd ever been through. And I can confidently say that because I dated him for 3 years, so no one come for me. But I'm not saying that to shame him or put him down, but it just shows how he graduated college and he crumpled and he was really stressed out and overwhelmed and couldn't handle it. I graduated college and I up and moved 2 months later to a new city where I didn't know anybody and never seen my apartment, and just said, fuck it, we ball, like just went with it. And I think it's because I'd already experienced so much challenge in my life that I was willing to take the risk and have the faith in myself, because I'm like, well, if I've overcome all this, there is nothing I can't do. And I didn't think of it like that back then, because I don't consider myself a very impulsive person. I don't consider myself somebody who makes decisions like in a snap. I like to really think things through. But I look back on that time in my life and I'm like, no, that was strength. That was me having faith in myself. And so that's why I'm saying the power of introspection is so real, because there's a difference between getting lost in our thoughts and letting our thoughts eat you alive and with these narratives, and being an introspective person and thinking about who do we want to be, the kind of person I aspire to be, and, thinking about the world. How do I fit into it? What do I want my role in the world to be? Like, there is such a huge difference there. And the things I've gathered from like Eileen Gu and other Olympic competitors when they were speaking. And again, it's funny because the Winter Olympics are over, but that quote that she said stuck with me. But, it's not always about training harder or wanting something more, or like the physical strength of grinding yourself into the ground. Sometimes strength means going inwards and doing the soul searching, being like, okay, why hasn't this worked so far? And just asking yourself those questions. Confirmation bias is so powerful. So the narratives that we tell ourselves, we're always seeking out the information to confirm those beliefs about ourselves. So she's right, you really do control who you are by what you're telling yourself. So I think as much as when we think of the word strength, we think of physically lifting heavy and outward strength, bravado, like we need to recognize that true strength does start internally. It starts with the thoughts you choose, the narratives you believe, the narratives that you feed into as a person, and how you recover from those narratives. Because we all have that little voice in the back of our head. And I know for me, that little voice is a raging cunt sometimes. She is a mega bitch and she is my number one hater. But you know what? If I listened to her all my life, I would not be where I'm at today. And don't get me wrong, she's bested me sometimes. I literally have my poor friends, thank God for them, but they have had to hear me crash out so much. And I actually was on the phone with a crush, a boy, if you will, the other night, and we're just friends right now. That's a whole other can of worms. We're not going to get into that. Anyways, I was on the phone with him and he's going through some things, I'm going through some things, and I was like just venting and crying, and I was like, sometimes it really is exhausting having to be strong for everybody else. That is also a big theme in my life that I want to explore in this episode, is the idea of you're having to be strong for others. Like, I don't know how many of you listening feel like you're the glue that is holding your families together, because I know I've felt like that. Like even in my childhood, I felt like if I wasn't getting straight A's and, being the best daughter I could be, that it was all gonna, it was so much pressure on me. But I was just so exhausted one day. I was like, I'm tired of having to hold it together for everybody else, to be there for everybody else. And he was like, so don't let yourself not, And I was like, I guess you're right. Like, and that's where the true strength came in, was allowing myself to feel what I was feeling and let it go, and allow myself to actually feel the emotions instead of continuing to bottle them up. And, strength sometimes is choosing yourself. And so I want to compare Eileen Gu's quote to also this idea of the constant self-improvement loop, because we're in that right now, where we're constantly seeing on TikTok, like people, like everyone's morning routine is get up at 5 a.m., go on a 2-mile run, read an entire book, and dunking your face in ice water and doing all that before 8 a.m., like before the sun's even up. And, what Eileen's quote is about, and the framework is about controlling your thoughts to shape who you are. And it's deeply internal and introspective. However, the self-improvement industry as a whole isn't actually focused on true self-improvement. It doesn't really focus on going inwards and getting to know with yourself and connecting with yourself. It's largely still focused on outward and external validation and outward input. Like I said, those morning routines and this idea of being your best self and the constant leveling up, like we as people, we're not products to be optimized. We're not, and yet we're treating ourselves as such. Like this constant need for self-improvement is not actually about self-improvement. It's about you continuing to run from the parts of yourself that you know truly need the work and truly need to heal. And it's just another form of avoidance. That is not strength. That is continuing to live a fear-driven life. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with you getting up at 5:30 and going on your run and wearing your nose strips and hey, I love mouth tape. That shit actually does work. I swear it has helped me sleep so much better and deeper, but that's not what true strength is. There is merit to self-improvement, right? I all think we should constantly be looking to improve ourselves, be the best version of ourselves, be the best hello, am I okay today? I think we should all be, looking to be the best version of ourselves and improve ourselves. But what does that actually look like and mean? It's not reading a million self-help books. And like I said, getting on the treadmill and running yourself into the ground. That's avoidance in a really nice outfit. If you're constantly moving, constantly working on yourself, you're not actually sitting with yourself long enough to take those clothes off and get to know what's underneath. You're building this idealized version of yourself. You're building your Ken doll or your Barbie doll. You're building this picture perfect world and not healing. And that's not strength. Again, I want to look at the Barbie movie. Like everything there, all the characters, all the Barbies, they were so idealized and you didn't see the actual cracks begin to form until they began to be introspective and start asking questions. And then by the end of the movie, like they healed because they did that work. And I know that sounds silly. It's literally a movie about dolls. But that movie itself was about how everything on the outside looks so shiny and new and pretty and put together in this amazing package. And yet underneath there were so many cracks. I mean, the monologue that will forever live in my mind because that is what women go through on the daily. We're constantly doing our hair, doing our nails. I mean, literally, I can't even tell you guys how long for even this episode. Like I'm being kind of hit. Like I spent so much on my hair today and I'm still not happy with it. And I'm like, well, here we are. I'm recording anyways. Like that is the self-improve. Like we've just repackaged old standards and old ideals into modern, cheaper silicone packaging. I don't know why I said silicone, whatever, polyester plastic packaging. And we're calling it self-improvement and it's $1 billion industry. And yet none of that actually teaches people how to get to know themselves. And it's just a longer route of getting to the same wound and spiraling. Like eventually at some point, the cracks will begin to form again in your own life. And that's why healing our nervous system is so important too. This is something that I have just kind of started to look into and work on because I realized how much of, I think even my health issues stem from my nervous system and the way it's just so shot and traumatized. And I seriously, like women especially tend to, we've seen it, like PCOS, hypothyroidism, like those are what I have, endometriosis. Like there's so much to show that emotional trauma really does come out in physical illness in the body. And women especially tend to have these experiences. And here's the thing, depth is a gift. Emotional depth is a beautiful thing. It is one of the things I pride myself most on is being able to be vulnerable. And that is, I would consider one of my greatest strengths, right? You always sit down in the interview and they ask you, what's your greatest strength? What's your biggest weakness? For me, one of my strengths is my ability to get vulnerable with people and just be so emotional and brutally honest. That I would consider one of my strengths. It becomes a trap when you have a dysregulated nervous system. And for a long time, I did, and honestly still do. But sometimes your anxiety is masquerading as your intuition, and it becomes really hard to differentiate the two. And that's where that little voice in your head becomes a raging bitch again. And you kind of just spiral, especially especially around your period. For the girls who get it. Like the week before my period is always just like a living hell in my own mind. It's not the physical, it's not cramps, it's whatever. It's a living hell in my own mind because I don't like how like right now, I don't like how I look in anything. I don't like the way my makeup looks. I don't like the way my hair looks. I feel like I suck at my job. And it's so easy to get trapped in that loop. But what will be the difference is slowing down and being able to kind of go inwards and like ask yourself, where is this coming from? And separate your thoughts. That's where the strength piece comes in. That's where the mental fortitude comes in. There was a study that I found that kind of supported all of what I'm talking about, and it's called Experiential Avoidance and Behavioral Disorders. And it literally says avoidance of internal experiences is a transdiagnostic driver of anxiety, depression, and behavioral dysregulation. So strength means turning inwards, not away from yourself. Like this research I would encourage you guys to go look at the study if you are curious on this subject, but the research is clear. Like the more we're trying to not feel something, the louder it gets in our minds. And your avoidance isn't neutral. It's actively making things worse. You know how we always say not making a choice is still a choice. Inaction is still an action. It's the same thing here. Avoiding is still choosing the misery. It's choosing the anxiety. And this is why numbing, staying busy, and perpetual self-optimization can actually just be a really fancy, sophisticated way of running from your own shit. And that's why it's so important to recognize the signs of when we need to slow down and when we need to put the pedal back on the gas or the foot back on the pedal of the gas. You guys get what I'm trying to say there, all right? So how do we do it? How do we break the system? How do we break the cycle? How do we get out of our own way, get out of our own victimhood? You know, there was a time where that system that you built made sense. It protected you, it kept you going. You know, I look back at the year that I got laid off in 2024, and I think I largely lived in this because I was just in survival mode, right? Like I wasn't really focused on building yet. I was really just focused on surviving. But the problem is if you do that too much, surviving is a thing that keeps you from actually living your life. And I need you to do this honestly. Like you need to call out your own victimhood. Not be gentle with yourself and kind to yourself, but be honest. Like what is that story that you keep telling yourself about why you can't change and why it's always going to be this way? And like really sit and acknowledge what patterns do you return to, and for me, I had to do this is what relationships was I constantly recreating? Oh, hello. If you don't know what I'm talking about, welcome to the podcast. This formed out of a really traumatic relationship, and I realized I was trying to fix my boyfriend because I couldn't fix my dad because the chaos felt like home. The chaos felt safe. And that's the system. That is the system that we live in, that you're living in, and you built it. I built it for myself. But because the beautiful thing about that is because it's a system that you built, it's a box that you built, you can also dismantle it. You have the instruction manual of how to get yourself out of that shit. And that's where the power lives. That's where the strength lives. And that's being able to call yourself out there and start chipping away with that. And I seriously I think the best way to do this is by journaling. You guys know I love to talk about journaling. It's really helped me. But get really clear. Just give yourself one page to write it all down. Your relationship, your money, your career, your life as a whole. And it doesn't even have to be as an actual journal entry, just a map. Like make a timeline of your life and start to get really clear on where things either went wrong or went right. And like, where were you the happiest? Where were you at? Where were you the happiest? Where were you at in the timeline? What were you doing? Like, what's actually there versus what did you want, or what did you think was going on versus the reality? Like when your mind is so noisy and chaotic, you can't actually decipher anything. You can't get clear on anything. And I think that's why so many people just are running out of time, like, or just feeling like they need to run away. And I know I did that. I ran from New York and I thought New York was the problem. I thought I wasn't cut out to be a Manhattan girly. I thought I would never fit in there. I thought I wasn't worthy of it. I all these negative things that I told myself over the years based on bullies and things other people said. And again, none of them, but the thing is, the whole time, New York wasn't the problem. I was the problem. And I needed that space to get clear on what I really wanted in my life. And sometimes you need that. Sometimes you do need to physically move away from something to see it clearly, but that doesn't mean you stop loving it. And this is where the strength too can come in your relationship. Like if you're in a toxic relationship right now and you're not leaving because you still love this person, I would implore you to really dig deep about what it actually is that is keeping you there. Just because there's distance doesn't mean you stop loving something. And it is perfectly okay to love something from afar. Distance isn't automatically abandonment. And it's oftentimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself. You can love that person, place, city, whatever chapter it is of your life from afar, and recognize I no longer want to choose this for myself. And even in a relationship, like I said, with a toxic relationship, like true strength when you're in a toxic relationship looks like saying, I know I love you. I know I would want to spend the rest of my life with you, but I am choosing to walk away because I can't be loved like this for the rest of my life. And and having true mental fortitude and strength is what allows you to see things so clearly. Because again, we make ourselves, like Eileen Gu said, we build who we are I built this house brick by brick. Yeah, you are building your life. You're building the house of your life with the content you've consumed, the conversations you keep going, the people you keep in your circle, the jobs you're choosing, just everything in your environment and energetically affects you. It's how you keep your space. Is your space tidy and clean, or is it chaos? I know for me, when my brain, I always joke like the state of my apartment is a reflection of my brain at the time, but it's so true because when my apartment is in disarray and it looks like Hurricane Megan came through here, it means I'm overwhelmed and I'm stressed and I need to slow down. Like that is exactly what my mind works like. I need you to curate your life like your peace depends on it, because it absolutely does. And that's where having strength comes in. And that's also what is going to build your strength, because that strength is also what's going to help you build your discernment, because discernment is a learned skill. Just like I've said confidence is a learned skill. Discernment is also a learned skill. The biggest thing I've learned and I'm actively working on is my ability to observe and not absorb. And what do I mean by that? I've had to learn and realize that not everything deserves my energy, that not everything needs me to react to it. You can experience something, whether that's a triggering person, a difficult breakup, an old pattern resurfacing, without carrying it with you, internalizing it, and taking it home and still thinking about it a week later. That is what discernment is. And I'm still working on it. I'm not perfect, but that's where you can start to build internal strength. So that's, to me, what mental strength is all about. Is it's not about not caring. It's not about being nonchalant and Mrs. Cool Girl. Like the cool girl will never win. Just like they say the nice guy never wins, the cool girl never wins. And what I mean by that is caring deeply enough to let yourself feel all of it and then still choosing yourself in the end is what mental strength looks like. That means walking away from a toxic relationship, from an ex-boyfriend who, you love him, but you guys want different things out of life, from that friend who's been in your life for a decade, but they're kind of treating you like shit, from that toxic job, whatever it is, the version of your life that didn't happen. It's saying, you're allowed to miss those things. You're allowed to grieve them. You're allowed to say, I wanted this life so badly, and then walk away from it, because missing something doesn't mean you were wrong to leave it. It doesn't mean you did something wrong. Grief for what mattered and people who mattered is not weakness. It's evidence of something that was real, of something that you loved, and something that you cared about. That's why I'm saying the nonchalant and the I don't care performance, that's not real strength. That is, again, coming from a place of fear. Strength is letting yourself want things, letting yourself miss things, and be really honest about it, and being able to, again, discern when it fits into your life and when it doesn't. Walking away from something that is not right is absolutely one of the hardest things a person can do. And it's not cold, it's clarity. Like, again, going back to my college relationship, I always say that him breaking my heart was the absolute best thing that could have happened to me, because I would have never left. I did love him. I loved him really, really deeply. But I think looking back, again, we were already having our issues, but there was a part of me that knew deep down he wasn't my person. As much as I thought he wasn't my person. And the woman I've become today is so wildly incompatible with the understanding of where I wanted, of what understanding I have of where he wanted his life to go, that it would never work. Maybe he's also changed and he wants different too now. I hope he's changed in the last decade, but he had the strength to do what I could not, and that was walk away from the relationship that was no longer serving either of us. And again, it was the best thing that ever happened, because I moved to Nashville. I did all these things that I would not have done. I would have stayed in New York for him 1000%. And I don't think he would have ever moved for me. And neither of those things are wrong or bad. It just would have held me back. And that's where I was living from a place of fear of thinking no one else is ever going to love me again in my life. I'm never going to meet anybody else. And this is all my life is meant to be. And that's why I'm saying true mental strength, true internal strength looks like recognizing two things can be true at once. You can be overwhelmed with what's going on in your life and be grateful that you get to live that life at the same time. You could want more for your life and still appreciate where your feet are currently planted. You can be unsure of your next move, but still make the move forward. That is not contradiction. That is the actual meaning of living life and experiencing life. Because I said in the last episode I did, or a couple episodes ago, that we stopped treating life as an experience, something to be lived, but we started treating it as just like this stay in line thing. And something that you may take as toxic positivity, but I promise you it's not. And it's just me saying the truth. It's that life's a gift. Life is a gift, and it is meant to be lived and experienced. And unfortunately, suffering is a side effect of that. You can make a beautiful life for yourself even after years and years and years of grief and hardship and sadness. And think of one of your favorite celebrities. Like a majority of the craziest success stories we see come from places of extreme hardship. And it's because it built that fortitude in their mind, and it built them up to be resilient and have the strength in themselves and know themselves. And that's what made the difference. They didn't fall into the victim mindset. They didn't have the chip on their shoulder of there's some tortured, unappreciated artist. No, they used their experiences to build them up instead of eating them alive. So being strong, does it look like having it all figured out? I know I certainly don't have it all figured out, but showing up in your own life and continuing to truly live it is what actually strength looks like. So after listening to this episode, I want you guys to think back to the beginning of, even if you wrote it down or if you didn't, of asking yourself, what does strength look like to me? What does it mean to be strong? And reflecting on all this, I want you to think of if this has changed anything for you, or, really or ask yourself, were you truly honest in the beginning of the episode? Were you actually honest with yourself on what strength looks like? And again, none of this answer doesn't have to be perfect. You just need to be honest. The term being strong is such a broad term. And that's why I wanted to do this episode, because you have to recognize that it is a multifaceted idea. It's not simple. It's very, very complex. And I know for me, when I first meet people and they get to know me and my personality, the things people say about me is that I'm bubbly and I'm kind and this, and I love that. But then there comes a point where I start actually getting to know people, and I open up to them about the things that I've been through and experienced, about the traumas, about the assault, and just, things with my dad, all of the self-harm, like the nitty-gritty details of my life. And like clockwork, every single time what somebody says is, wow, I never would have expected you to have gone through all that. Or something along those lines, or of, wow, like, how are you still so optimistic? Or wow, how are you not like more bitter? And the honest answer is there is a point in time where I was, and there was a point in time too where I used my happiness and my bubbliness to mask that pain. And that was me running from it. But the true strength for me came from when I actually started to do the work to heal from those things and actually talk about them instead of intellectualize them and rationalize them from when I finally let myself cry about things that I just never let myself cry about. And if I don't let, you guys know I'm a crier. So if I'm not crying about something, that's hard. That's crazy. And, but that's where for me, it's funny because what people probably think made me strong is just pulling myself up and just forging forward, keep going, keep your head down. But instead, what the thing that actually made me the most progress in my strength is keeping my feet rooted and looking up again. And I don't know if that makes sense to you guys, but it makes sense to me. And it's the clearest way I can describe how I found my inner strength. But I really hope that if you're someone who's listening, who's been struggling and feeling lost, or just, you find yourself in this constant loop of whatever it is, self-doubt, anxiety, whatever it is, I hope this kind of gave you a little bit of clarity on where to start looking within yourself and how you can find your own strength and how you can build resilience. But if not, this month's Snail Mail Club is still available for purchase until the 15th of the month. And I hope you guys will sign up because this month's themes and prompts are all about strength and whimsy, like kind of piggybacking off of last month. And I just think that if you are somebody who has never done the work on looking internally, journaling is obviously a great, great way to start doing that. And I would encourage you to sign up for the Tough Love Club because it is, if you are overwhelmed with all these journal prompts online, I take you through a different theme each month, and it is a great place, I think, to start getting the monthly habit of journaling. So, yeah, that is all for this week's episode of Not the Girl Next Door. Like I said, sign up for the Tough Love Club. Make sure you leave us a 5-star review wherever you're listening, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. And I will see you guys next week for another episode. Bye for now.